Hey, what's
All
up,
right.
Cameron?
Not much. It's been one of those weeks, man. It really has. Um, Without getting into too much details in that. So my grandpa died Friday,
Oh, sorry to hear that.
and on top of that, had um, well, just we've had some issues with some of the equipment in Phoenix, which I was actually just talking to you about, and that we needed to get over there, and you were trying to figure out how to get there.
Yeah.
um, and then on top of that, our one of my dogs, like one of my Dutchies, which is like the Shepherd Malinois mix. Um, they He had a bad abscess develop in her throat,
Mm.
and it went from an acorn to literally like several grapefruits, literally in overnight,
Oh
to
my
the point it
gosh.
like shut off her airway. And the emergency vet didn't have any availability or anything else, and so I actually had to do surgery here in my
What?
house anchor.
Really? My gosh.
Um, So it still took her to the vet and everything. I had finally got one of the appointments. It was actually late yesterday, but it was able to see her so I could get the antibiotics and that, because obviously since it was a massive infection, you needed, like, even if I purged to clean the wound, you still needed those to prevent the infection coming in, and then also put a proper drainage in place. Um, and all they did is they checked in and it's like, oh, who did this? And I'm like, I actually had to. They're like, okay, cool. I'm actually surprised we don't recommend that, but yeah, you did it right. It's fine. Here's $300 for checking your work.
Oh my gosh.
So they billed me $300 just to tell me that. And I'm like, you
Really?
write me an
Wow.
antibiotics prescription. So
Got
I
your
had to
value
bite
out
my
of that
tongue a
one.
little bit on that.
Oh, I'm sure. Wow.
But
Oh,
yeah, so it's been a fun week, man. It's So without anyway, we don't need to get into all the depressive doom and gloom and everything. Hopefully you've been up to more fun than I have.
it's been a week, I guess just off to the races, just started out and stuff, just lots of family time lately and things there. So um
Good.
but yeah, no, I think that actually kind of like flows nicely into today's topic and conversation, which is about building a culture, positive culture, culture of trust, because like this is real life that you have going on outside of work. And everybody that shows up to go to work has a real life outside of whatever they're doing for that job and whatnot. And it can be heavy, like really, really heavy, with your grandpa and with your pets that become family members and things there. So it's like you've got to like almost like set all that stuff aside to show up for the people that you're obligated to, you might have a fiduciary responsibility to or an obligation to, and you got to be able to perform your best there too. And so it all kind of goes into the culture
Frankly,
there. And
like
how
with
does your team receive that, right? Or how do you put that aside, or how do they
yeah,
champion
I
you in
mean,
that?
frankly, I think I show up and it doesn't phase me as much, only and honestly because I don't really have an option not to. Um, like for example, with my grandpa dying, like yeah, it sucks and everything, but at the end of the day, I realize now that, like, my grandma just literally had her hip replaced. So she's pretty much immobile. He was taking care of her the entire time. Um, and he was perfectly fine. Like literally the day of, everything perfectly fine, had just mowed his lawn, had done a bunch of other things, gets out of the shower, says, I'm having a heart attack, like plain as day, like he's ordering toast type deal.
Mm,
Collapsed onto the ground, like just gone. Which also gives you the appreciation, like, hey, yeah, life is short. You don't know when your time is.
yeah.
Obviously, when he's up there in years, I mean, to be expected when you're in your 80s, and that it's kind of one of those things, like, you don't know. Your time is more inevitable than ever on when. Um, but yeah, it definitely wasn't one of those peaceful in the sleeps, unfortunately. Um,
Yeah.
And the other thing is, and the reason again that comes into my motivation is like, I'm the only one in my family that'll step up. and take care of her and that. And I don't really like to get into it. Most of my family are like to do their own thing. We'll just put it that way.
Sure.
And it just means that I have to double down on efforts to make sure that I have the ability and bandwidth to either take care of her myself now, or now I need to try to figure out a way to put a CNA or some kind of person in there to help that. Because I really don't want to see her going into a home, and that's the furthest thing, and I know that would kill her off essentially. That would suck like literally the last bit of joy out of her and purpose and everything, and that would basically condemn her to a death sentence because nobody would ever see her in there. So that's there's a lot of dynamics with that, and so for me, like having a culture or like having the responsibilities and that it's not it's the same thing with work or same thing with life in general, and that you don't do things necessarily because you want to. You do them because you know you have to, and if you expect everyone else to handle things for you, it'll never get done, right?
Yeah.
Hey, sorry, I have kids running in here, of course, now. So, and that's the other thing is I'm full-time dad right now, is again, and they don't like to listen, especially when they know that I'm busy or distracted.
Yeah,
They're beating on each other. So.
that's for sure. No, it says a lot about you and wanting to take care of being there for your grandma and your family and stuff like that too. So that's awesome.
Yeah, he's throwing a tantrum with that. So if he comes in, then you'll know why. But anyway,
yeah. No, but I mean that really does go into everything that just people have real lives and real life going on and stuff outside of whatever.
Everyone expects a perfect family, a perfect company culture, a perfect everything else. The reality is that doesn't exist.
It doesn't. There's no perfect prom date out there. Like it just doesn't exist, right?
Like I can sit here and throw myself a pity party and be like, hey, this sucks. I'm overwhelmed and burnt out and everything else. But at the end of the day, like if nobody else is going to come to my rescue, nobody else is going to do this. Nobody else is going to step up to the plate and bat for me. Like, so I need to get over it and step up to the plate and deal with it, handle my own stuff, and bat my averages, right?
Mm-hmm.
And as long as I know that I'm consistent, it's the same example I've used plenty of times before. And the simplest analogy is like if you avoid doing the dishes and everything once or twice, it's not a big deal. But you avoid it a few times, and next thing you know is you have dishes piled up on the whole counter, all over the stove. It's a mess, and it now takes substantially longer to clean it. Not only because of the amount of dishes that piled up, but because now they're caked, like all the food or whatever else is caked onto them. So it's a lot harder. So that's the other thing is as I program that into my head, it's like, look, I need to do this now to avoid pain later. Yeah. I need to do this now to avoid this and that for it piling up or becoming into a perpetually worse situation. So that's the same thing with, again, personal life or business. I know I need business stuff done. And as much as I hate paperwork and I do not like dealing with that, it sucks a lot of the life of me. I know that right now, 20 minutes of paperwork here and there is a heck of a lot better of like 3 days straight of paperwork. And that because I let it pile up so bad.
Yeah. Yeah. So true. Yeah. I think a lot of times that's with a lot of things in our lives, right? Like if we don't address them in a timely fashion or manner, it's going to get out of control. And then you have this mountain to climb to get out of it, to deal with it, to process it and things. It's And, as much as you don't want to deal with it at the time either, right? Like nobody loves doing the dishes or whatnot, right? I do know that in my house, if I want some quiet time, I'll go do the dishes because guess who's not going to bother me while I'm doing dishes? Nobody. Hey, can I give you a hand with that? Yeah, yeah, that doesn't happen.
No, I mean, it does for a very short time in their youth. And then, like, I literally had my kids come up to me and it's like, hey, can we just stop doing chores? They're just, they suck and everything, and they never end. I'm like, yeah, welcome to our life. And that, do you think dad made all this mess? Do you think this? And that's honestly, that contributes to the same culture. And it's not a way of like condescending and saying like, do
Oh,
you not do this? Blah, blah, blah. It's, hey, I didn't make this mess. Um, do you think that's fair when you have to clean up your sister's mess and everything else? Because they do, like, if they leave a mess at the table, I'm like, I don't care, and that it's part of your chore. If they leave it, you have to clean it still.
yeah,
And they complain about that, and I was like, well, okay, do you think that's fair? And they're like, no, it's not fair. I'm like, okay, do you think it's fair dad has to do all the chores, right? That has to do all the work around here, that has to do all the other things, tasks and that. And then they look at me and they say, no. Okay, well, that's why I'm asking you, because now you get to see how when you don't get something done, you put more work on somebody else.
yeah. There you go. Yeah, absolutely. It does
So
create
that's why
that
we all
comfort.
need to carry our weight, and that's why we all need to clean, and that's why dad asks you to clean before it gets into this bad of a mess,
Right.
right? Um,
Yeah. And I
so it's,
think that can easily tie into the culture, the culture of our homes and stuff, bleeding into the culture of our workplaces as well.
absolutely, it's fostering a culture of accountability
Yeah.
and also using some of the pain points that we have into positive reinforcement, right?
Yeah.
It's very easy to turn it into negative, toxic, and everything. Of like, hey, you don't do this, you need to show up and everything, or you're fired, blah blah blah. But instead, having a culture of being able to say, like, hey, this is what we expect, this is why, this is how your actions affect everybody else, and that, and we are all like, it's one thing too when you ask things of other people too, and you're not willing to do any of it, right?
Right. Oh yeah.
And also, if there's no incentive for your employees, then there's also, but if you show um, like at the end of the day, it comes down to truly caring. Like me and you truly care about each other's families. Me and you truly care about a lot of the other stuff, which is why the dynamic and that I think is at least, maybe I'm speaking for myself, but it's really
I
good or
agree.
positive on that. Um,
Absolutely.
and and it's also because we contribute, like we're open to criticism and being willing to give it back and forth and everything, good or bad, right? And that's the only way that truly you improve as individuals, and that's really how you foster a culture of positivity and everything, where you have people that are in the mindset of like, hey, I want to be better, and I know all the people around me want to also make me better as a person,
Yeah,
right?
it's that, and it's getting them to a level of understanding as to why. So just with the example with your kids, like, hey, can I just not do that? It's like, well, it's possible, but you'd cause this other burden, and these are the other reasons why. And so a lot of times it's just like genuinely finding out, oh, okay, there's a why, and there's these other reasons that I didn't know about beforehand, why it actually matters. And I think a lot of times that it gets overlooked at work as well, right? Like it's just, I just asked you to do this because I asked you to do this, right? I didn't ask you for my health or something. Like, and
Well, it's too
or
toxic. Yeah, it goes toxic both ways in that. One is they don't understand their purpose, their why, or the reasons, or anything else there, and they're like, "Hey, this doesn't matter. This job sucks." Blah blah blah. Or the other side of it is, well, they could never fire me because they would put them too bad into a situation, which shows like a disregard for other people, right? They don't care about their coworkers. They don't care about that, and they're only showing up for, like, it's almost a bitter resentment.
yeah,
Same thing that happens in a relationship, right? If one per like if you feel like you're the only one that does dishes in the relationship, or the only one that does this, or the only one that does that, um, it kind of gets like a lot of people naturally get a bit of resentment. Says, hey, this person never helps me out. Like it's always on my shoulders. It's always on this. And then that turns into very big spite. But if you have clearly established roles that says, hey, this is your skill set. This is what you're really good at. This is what we're doing. And that if you don't want to do that anymore, let's get you to the point where you can train somebody else, right? Let's get you to the point where you can move forward and move past that. And let's also culture responsibility of like, hey, yes, you have your responsibilities, but don't be afraid to like chip in and help other people on that, because you don't know when you're going to need their help either, right?
Yeah.
And so it's fostering that culture of collaboration and uplifting each other, where it's we don't enable each other. Like you have stuff to do, I know I have stuff to do. We know like the roles fairly well, but it still doesn't change like that that we will still chip in and be like, okay, what's like where can we help each other? What we can, whether it's personal or business again, right? That makes sense.
Yeah. Yep, exactly.
So it is dancing that fine line, but again, where resentment and toxicity comes into place, where even especially nowadays you have the PC or politically correct movement nonsense. Um, there's a lot of ways to have positivity without like shaming to things to the point where everything gets canceled and censored and everything else. Because once you start doing that, you've also shut down the ability for people to communicate issues to you.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Because then they're like, well, I don't know how to do this, or else they're walking on eggshells around you. And then it's like, then they, like you just said, they'll shut down. And then you've kind of like lost it, right? It's really dangerous when your good people go silent because they're like, well, I'm not valued. I'm just not going to say anything at all.
Even in a personal relationship, the moment your spouse goes silent, like, so I know this goes against a lot of people, but the more loud that they are, the more that they're actually trying to make that work.
Yes. Yeah.
And they are clearly shouting like an internal pain or trauma that they're not being able to communicate well. And naturally, the impulse is to feel attacked, right? And then retaliate or retort back and escalate it, right?
Yeah.
And that goes to in marriage that ends in divorce, in employment it ends in termination or a really bad, like just toxic leave of absence or whatever it may be on that end. But both end out the same way, which is why these principles are kind of universal. If you can master these principles, it benefits your life on both sides of the table. So if you can foster the communication and you can be the one to say, sit back and not take anything personal and understand words are just words, and that they're trying to usually inflict pain on somebody else because of the pain that they're feeling. And if you can understand that pain, then it gives you the ability to not only take that and understand it and allow them to alleviate, because it's basically like a balloon, right? Once they've blown up and they've unleashed on you, now it's the opportunity to be like, okay, let's deflate it, let's heal it, and let's get it back to ground one, and let's install a better pressure release valve on
Yeah.
this to make sure that that doesn't happen again, right?
No,
How are
that's
we going to
exactly
handle
right.
this and move forward? What can we do? Oh, I'm pissed off and everything. I'm doing all this job and everything. Everything else falls on me. Nobody else is helping me. Nobody's meeting the deadlines, and then I'm getting yelled at. You know what? That's a fair, valid point, right? That shouldn't be happening. Let's talk to that and that. Let's see if we can address this and make sure things are happening, getting it done, and then put in the order. What can I do set you up for success moving forward?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I was with a group of individuals recently where one really started to shut down, and then another tried to go and identify what was going on or how they could help support. And then it just turned into this big blow up and stuff. But the fact that after everything blew up, because you could kind of cut the tension with a knife leading up to it, but then after the blow up occurred, it was fine. In other words, like that release had to happen, and then everybody could go and recalibrate after that, right? Nobody wanted the blow up to begin with, right? But because it occurred, then everybody could address the elephant in the room. Additional release valves could be put in place, solutions could be put in place, conversations could then be had, and progress could be then made for progress forward. But it couldn't have happened until the big blow up, unfortunately, because it just got out of control.
Well, and that's one thing that frankly I did agree with the old mentality. And no, I didn't agree to the extent that it went sometimes. But the reality is if you look back into clear from 30s, 50 to even clear up to the 80s, even 90s for that matter, usually somebody pissed you off. There was a very big disagreement. You'd deck each other's daylights out, and then you'd be best friends after.
Right, exactly. And what's funny is like sometimes you might see viral videos do that same thing, right? You see people, couple just random road ragers or whatever, they go at it, they duke it out. Then after that, like they, they just go on and move on with their day.
They can part ways in that. And granted, men are very different. Like I don't even care. I'm going to trigger some people with this. True men don't really they don't hold grudges, and that they get it out of their system. They understand it wasn't personal or anything. They just had a lot of unresolved crap and everything. And sometimes you deserve to get your butt kicked because you did something that was really stupid or disrespectful or whatever else. And it was an opportunity for learning, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Nowadays, it's very much, even sticks and stones and words and everything. And you can say anything. And if I don't agree with it, cancel it and blah, 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 which means A, most people won't talk. B, most people don't want to, they're so sue happy and everything that nothing gets addressed or fully resolved, right? And then you have this facade and this very two-faced culture, and that especially in a lot of Fortune 500 companies, I've noticed this, where you'll see all these policies and you're like, hey, we're gonna have these team meetings and we're gonna do this cheer and we're gonna do that, and you can watch across the whole faces of all the team members, and you can tell which ones have a good culture even by store, right? I can go to numerous chains or franchises and I can tell when they have a good leader in place or a good store manager strictly because of how their employees and that interact. So if you're giving a lecture or whatever else and that, it feels like a lecture in the first place or whatever it may be, and you watch every single person check out in the entire audience in that, where they're just like, yeah, cool. Yeah. Yeah, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, go us. Go team. Yeah, cool. That clearly shows that there's a detachment. They're not feeling heard. They're not feeling listened to. They're not doing that. And it's not saying that you're going to please every single person, but usually that can be avoided, or they're a person that is toxic in themselves and they're so afraid of everyone, they're not getting their way, they're selfish and they only care about what they're getting. At that point, that's a person that you need to cut out like a cancer, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yep.
those people will spread and they'll start spreading their influence to other people, which is substantially harder to remove from your company's environment or even your family for that matter. But obviously with family, that's the great thing about family is that you take the lessons, because typically you can't just boot them, right? Until you're adults and you can cut them out or whatever else, or say hey, I'm only going to talk to you once a month or something like that, to how much that's my tolerance for you.
Look through it.
Yes. But typically, especially when you have siblings, it teaches you to address conflict and either toxic or uplifting. You can do one or the other, and that's when you either have a really close relationship with your siblings or a really toxic distance relationship, right? And so if you take some of those lessons and be like, hey, look, I just learned how to do how I can better resolve this conflict to where I am forced to do this. And if we take that same approach, especially in marriage, you actually are going to be more successful in other things, because you're now developing your problem solving skills at this point, because you actually are taking your commitments seriously. To of like, because like for example, nowadays, there's the whole like marriage is the commitment of like to till death do us part, or if you're like LDS or something, it's all time and all eternity, right?
Yep.
Um, so a lot of people say those as just words, but they don't ever follow their words in that, because divorce is always on their lips. Conflict is always on the lips. They're always willing to bash, degrade, do all these other things, cheat if they don't feel like they've living up to the expectations, or that they're like, for example, if I'm not happy, go off and do that, and somehow that's justified. It's not, right? It's
Yeah.
being fully accountable to your word, being fully accountable to what you say, what you commit to, what you deliver on. So even with my kids, if I say something, I follow through on it.
Sure.
And even if it's that's why I have to be very careful about what punishments I say.
Exactly, because you're the one that has to follow through on it, right? Otherwise, it's these empty threats. Absolutely.
Exactly. So if you don't, it's the same thing with your employees. If you say something and you don't follow through on it, or you hold one employee, because you like their personality more, or you click more with them to this standard, but then you hold everybody else to this other standard, everyone sees that hypocrisy, and
Yeah.
everybody sees and loses respect for you.
Absolutely.
That's the reality.
Yep.
And if you have that buddy where you're holding people to different standards based on what their social status or value is to you, that is the quickest way humanly possible to foster a very toxic culture. It's the same way too. If you want very extremely disobedient kids, kids will always disobey. But if you want them to act out substantially more, just don't keep your word. And I'm
Right.
talking about both good and bad. So
Right.
both with the punishment, and both like, hey, if you say you're going to take them out to ice cream or whatever, if they do X, Y, and Z, and then you make excuses, oh, we can't do that now. Like,
Right. Exactly. Where's that at? But if you follow through on that, right? If you're following through, or if you're creating that positive culture of one that can be trusted, that does follow through, that keeps their word, then people really are going to want to cling to that culture and foster that positivity there. They're going to want to be a part of it. It's attractive.
yeah, it's not only that, but it also teaches like, okay, I can, like, for example, if I say, okay, hey, we're going to get this if you do this, and I constantly move the goalpost on them to where I never fulfill, I never give them anything I say, it shows them like, hey, you don't actually have to commit. It's use whatever words you have to use to manipulate them to get what you want, right? And then basically like, hey, it doesn't matter if I'm be good or behave or anything else, because the outcome doesn't matter,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Exactly.
Um, so it's the
So,
same thing with employment. And that if I say like, hey, you meet this metric and I'm going to give you the promotion, and then something happens or whatever, and now I'm strained or tight money wise, well, I hate to tell you, I'm going to figure out a way to make that happen, because I am my word. And I know how quickly that slope is. And it's not just a matter of like, so even if you have no integrity as a person, like just go on to the simple principle that, like, do you want people to have respect for you, lose respect and everything else, and any integrity that you have, to the point that nobody in their right mind would ever follow you or ever listen to you or ever care about you and that? Or do you want to get to that, or do you want to continually like if you, or do you want to build something that truly is monumental, that shows like you are the person that everybody can rely on, that can trust on, and that is truly being a leader. So if you, again, if
yeah.
you really look at it, being a leader is being able to serve everyone else other than yourself. And there's two different things, like, so leadership and manipulation are very closely aligned. They're very closely in parallel with each other. The difference is the leadership is, when I'm trying to lead somebody, I'm trying to do something that benefits me. I'm trying to do something that benefits them. I'm trying to do something that benefits us as a team, collectively as a whole,
Yep.
right? And I'm able to communicate how we're going to do that, what, and why we're doing that. Whereas a manipulator just says, oh, hey, if you don't do this and everything, then you're just going to be like, basically, it's again only looking at their own personal gain.
Yeah,
What
exactly.
they can get out of
Yep.
you and everything. So,
Yeah.
oh, do you want people to ridicule you, or do you want me to start telling other people that you're this horrible person? Do you want me to make sure that I never give you a good job recommend and that? Then I need you to step up, right? That's manipulative.
Yeah,
Whereas,
absolutely.
hey, I need you to do this because the team is relying on this, right?
Yeah,
And
you
this
don't want to let
affects
the team
person
down.
this. Yeah,
Yeah, you want to
exactly.
be part of that. So this has been a
Well,
fascinating
that's a fine
conversation.
line,
Like
right?
it really is. Yeah, I think we can keep going for quite a while on this and stuff. But yeah,
No,
no.
I think that's a lot for right now, and frankly, that's probably a good cutting point because
So
it is getting redundant at this point. But it's still important. It's a very important topic and everything. And so as long as we understand that, then great. But
yep.
I'll kind of give you one final thing, like, hey, what is one thing that you found is the most ability to take even negative situations, or even from, because obviously negative stuff from our personal lives and business life can translate into work, some of that baggage. And so what can we do to essentially make sure that that it doesn't contribute to a negative environment from what you've seen?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I think it's the communication and being able to talk about difficult things. And so, even if a blow up does happen, everything's not always going to be perfect or whatnot, but that is actually progress. When you kind of peel the layers back, whether it's positive or negative, it is progress to allow you to be able to move forward. And hopefully you've got the right mindset and backing in training, listen to podcasts or whatever else it is, to work through things, even difficult situations, to turn them into positive outcomes.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, it is simply being able to understand, like, and that's one thing as a business leader. If you see somebody that it gets to the point where they're actually blowing up, um, and it is, yeah, a lot of it could probably be stuff from home and that had nothing to do with you.
Sure. Yeah.
But at the same time, if it is, because a lot of the time the reason that they quit a job is because of the stuff that's built up there,
Yeah.
and they don't feel listened or heard or cared about or anything else. And
Yeah. What do they say? They don't leave bad companies, they leave bad leaders, right? Bad leaders
yeah,
all over the place. Life's too short for putting too much time into them.
well, it is the failure as a leader and everything
Yep.
for doing that. And it's the same reason too that you'll have sometimes employees that thinks that they are literally the only thing holding the glue that's holding the ship
Yeah,
together,
exactly. Yep.
and they're not.
Company's on
So
my
that
shoulders.
being a leader is about addressing those things and being like, hey, look, do you see this other performance? Do you see these metrics and everything else? Do you see where
Takes
yours
everybody.
are? What do we, I'm not doing this to condescend you and that, but what can we do to get you up to this point and everything to help you perform at this level, right?
Exactly. Yep.
Whole different conversation than like, oh, see all these people and that, like, you ain't shit.
Exactly. Exactly. No, hey, thanks for taking the time today. I know it's been kind of crazy week for you and stuff. Sorry to again hear about your family and things, and wish you guys all the best. And here to
It is
support you
what
guys
it
any
is.
way we can. So
No, you enjoy. I saw your Jeep and everything. The doors are off on it.
oh man, it's a
So
lot of fun. It is a
you're gonna
lot
have
of
some
fun.
fun. I already know it. So you enjoy that and have a great. Well, it's still technically holidays for us because we have the 24th coming up, right?
Yeah.
But
Yep. My son comes
enjoy
off his
the
mission next week, so we're in party mode this summer. So we're doing
awesome.
so. Yeah.
I didn't realize that it was that soon.
Yeah. Me
But
neither. No, it's it's gone by super fast. We can't believe it. So super
yeah, the
fast. So
last week is always the longest, right?
yeah, it sure is. But I mean, yeah, who's counting here? 10, 11 days left. But
Anyway, well, I'll if you need anything, let me know in that. But
same here.
congrats on all of that and have fun. And we will catch you guys on the next podcast. Thank you for joining us. Be sure to like, share this podcast if you found value. It's the only way that we grow this audience and to help other people and better their lives, and in turn, better and get back to the America that we actually knew, which is always fostered on community and building each other and making us each better as individuals. So, and collectively as a whole.
100%.
So, absolutely. Have a great one. Take care.
Peace.